Mr. Chairman.
The Honourable Christopher Finlinson.
I'm sure the committee will indulge me when I simply say how grateful I am as a minister to an excellent chair of the Maori Affairs Select Committee. He and that team in Maori Affairs have done a wonderful job, and I want to say to him that his best years are ahead of him and thank him for his service to this country. And I also want to acknowledge very briefly Shane Jones, who's left us, because he was, this is a bipartisan effort, and the contribution of Shane to treaty settlements and the advice he's given me over the years I greatly appreciate, certainly in relation to the Te Hiku legislation which has been introduced to the House. And I said to Kelvin Davis, for whom I have enormous respect as a person and a parliamentarian, that it's a pleasure to work with him. It will be a pleasure to work with him on these matters, unlike, I regret to say, Mr Harawera, who talks big but never delivers. And in fact, when it came to Ngāpuhi, he said to me not so long ago, I say one thing to you and another thing to others in my family. Well, that's the way he wants to operate, but at the end of the day, he doesn't achieve very much, and that's why I think Kelvin leaves him for dead. But this is a bipartisan effort, and I want to say that so much good work has been done by the Chief Crown negotiators. Mr Henare was gracious enough to mention Rick Barker, former minister in here, and Paul Swain, who chairs the negotiating panel and does a very good job for me. I also want to mention people like John Isles and also John Wood, because together they have been a formidable team and have enabled us to address a large number of matters. And I must, of course, refer to the Office of Treaty Settlements and the very good work that they do. And the proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating. Just a couple of weeks ago, for example, we signed agreements of principle with the Wairoa and Hastings Taiwhenua of Ngāti Kahungunu. I'm very busy at the present time working with Ron Mark and the team in Ngāti Kahungunu ki Wairarapa. We're making very good progress down the east coast, and what I certainly hope is before this House rises on the 31st of July that we will have been in a position where we can sign a deed of settlement with the Wanganui River iwi, and that will be a great day for this country, because that is in fact, Mr Chair, 150 years of litigation which went to all the courts of our land and has been a very long time coming, and as I understand it, ratification is going very well, and it will be a tremendous tribute to Mrs Turia to be able to sign that deed of settlement, and I see Mr Borrows listening intently, and so he should, because it's in his takiwā. It'll be great to sign it the day after Mrs Turia says goodbye to this House after what has been an extraordinary period of service. So there is a lot of work to do. Let me emphasise this government never said there was a deadline of 2014. You cannot have a deadline to resolve these hugely important matters. It was an aspirational goal. We have done our very best, and the progress that has been made has been phenomenal. Take, for example, I hear the sneering of Sue Moroney on the other side. She couldn't buy into anything bipartisan if she tried. But Hauraki is an example of where there are 12 individual iwi and 2 collective settlements, and with a bit of luck and a good headwind, we should be in a position, I hope, to initial at least 10 of those individual deeds and the 2 collectives before we get into the campaign season. So, in a spirit of bipartisanship, it's often regarded as a great weakness of mine, but I try and reach out in a bipartisan way. I have to say that I do appreciate the support of the Labour Party and other parties in this House so that we could get the work done. I have nothing but contempt for New Zealand First, which took a shockingly partisan approach to the Tūhoi bill when it was going through the House the other day. They were divisive. They had 2 fundamental problems. They were divisive and unpleasant, and they were plain wrong. They didn't listen to the facts as they were spelled out to them, and instead, like that, that demented creature over there just yelled and screamed.
The question is that vote treaty negotiations stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that vote social development stand part of the schedules. I call Sue Moroney.
Well, thank you, Mr Chair. It's a pleasure to rise and speak on the estimates debate for vote social development. And Mr Chair, I want to start at the beginning, which is around child poverty, because